Is my working? Am I audible? Okay. So first of all, a correction, I'm not assistant professor. So I was assistant professor around 10 years ago. And now, inshallah, in January, I'm expecting my promotion to professor. I'm associate professor since 2015. So my talk today is about a topic of artificial intelligence for everyone, and it focuses on my new role, which HEC and Government of Pakistan has tasked me with to centrally manage the National Center of Artificial Intelligence and take you through what kind of labs we have, what kind of AI focus we have, what kind of fields we are focusing on, what kind of partners we are working with, and I'll also show you glimpses of some of the projects that we've started. The center is new, and we're just starting out with new research, and not all of these projects will be my own, but of course they are part of the center which I'm doing. I'll show you some of my own projects within this as well. So, starting off, so first of all, why build intelligent systems? I mean, what's the need of it? I mean, we hear the buzzword of AI all the time. It's everywhere, right? AI. So, but what's the need to build artificial intelligence? I mean, the factories are running fine. Everything is working okay on the roads. Nalra is working. All the organizations are running pretty fine. So why build artificial intelligence systems? So the first thing that we need to note is that, humans, the biological name of humans is Homo sapiens. And Homo sapien, the word Homo sapien, the phrase Homo sapien actually means man the wise, right? So wisdom or intelligence is that central characteristic which sets us apart from the animals. So the animals in their kinematics, dynamics and control are better than humans in many examples that you can give. For example, none of us in this room can run faster than a cheetah, right? None of us can fly in the air like an eagle. None of us is as agile as a monkey. But it's the characteristic of intelligence that actually sets us apart from the animals. Now, how is this relevant to the AI theme? That machines which are not intelligent, for example, we have Bugatti Veyron 16.4, now the Chiron is the fastest car, we have electric cars and all this stuff coming in. But place a self-driving car right next to it, and which one of them seems technologically advanced to you? Which one of them do you think will be safer on the road, which will make less accidents? When cars drive, for example, from Gwadar all the way up to China, so don't you think the drivers will get tired somewhere on the way? They will need to rest and stuff like that. So will that increase the transportation time? Hence, multiply the costs and a lot of opportunity costs and a lot of other things like that. So AI is very much the need of the hour. It's the need of the hour not just in the advanced world, but in the world today, here in Pakistan as well. And I'll give you real life examples of things that we are doing here in Pakistan, problems that we are facing here and we are tackling right now using artificial intelligence, which have no solution if you do not put artificial intelligence in the loop. So, first of all, we all think we know what AI is. Most of the time when you ask somebody what artificial intelligence is, they'll say it's machine learning. That's actually not a correct definition, because AI has at least 4 distinct types which are different from each other, and machine learning is one part of one of them, right? So if you put a general definition of artificial intelligence, what is AI? It is the method by which computer systems are able to perform tasks normally requiring human intelligence, such as visual perception, speech recognition, decision making, and translation between languages. Now you see, this is a very application-focused definition. That there is some sort of magic which we humans have, right, by which we are able to do this kind of complex tasks. And whatever machine can do this kind of magic, produce some complicated task like this, can do some complicated task like this, we'll call it intelligent machines. Some students look at me with surprise when I tell them that even the normal search algorithm working inside Windows, when you search for a file, is actually an AI algorithm. If you apply the wrong search strategy on it, it will take forever to solve that. Anybody who has studied classical search-based artificial intelligence would know that. So, but now since that does not seem like it does not seem like a trivial task anyway. It does not seem like a non-trivial task. It does not seem too complex. That's why we put it out of the domain of artificial intelligence, because we think that whenever a machine is pulling off some magic of this sort, then it will be called artificial intelligence. But underlying techniques of this sort will keep evolving, things will become simpler, and our definition of what we classify as AI may evolve with time, right? Because we want AI to be some sort of magic. So artificial intelligence is already everywhere. The technology is widely used in ways that are quite obvious, such as self-driving cars, and others that are inconspicuous. So I will give you one example in which we are trying to bring artificial intelligence into a domain which is traditionally thought of as not a technical system at all. You see, systems are of 3 kinds in general. You can make many classifications of systems. They are technical systems, There are socio-technical systems and there are social systems. So technical systems would be one which have, the machines and, like in the factory production is going on and there's a machine, so that machine is a technical system. Socio-technical is a man-in-loop system. Like for example, an aeroplane is flying in the air. It's complex enough. A spaceship or rocket is flying into space, but it's a man-in-loop. The man is supposed to do some things, and the human, you don't want to put the human out of the loop. One way is to make the machine totally autonomous. The second way is to make the training of the human better, to better be able to predict whether he's going to cause an accident if his training is not appropriate, if he keeps making the same error again and again. Because these are so common. I have a Horizon 2020 project just on this topic. And the third one are totally social systems, like for example systems in which humans are dealing with humans, right? So for example, somebody, you could say like in the system of judiciary. I'm going to give you an example of that. And next, inshallah, if the video works, we're going to see the statement from the Chief Justice of Pakistan about the system of judiciary which we are bringing about using artificial intelligence. The volume was very low. I hope you got all that, like the idea of the project we'll be doing with them. So it's that, when we initially started discussing the judiciary, it's like people, and like when we started telling this statement when it came out and it was shared everywhere, we shared it on our page as well, people have, of course, a lot of questions about this kind of system, that when the data comes in, and of course there will be a lot of, some judgment comes out and maybe a lot of people don't agree with that judgment. I'm not going to be more specific than this. So like at various times during history, there's some judgment coming out, and some people agree, some people don't agree. So people think that, maybe one judgment is, deviating from a certain trend or pattern. But you see, unless you do a statistical analysis using the data and put out some numbers like that, you can never even tell whether a certain judgment coming out is, differing from the general trend in the judgments, right? Without that analysis, you have nothing to go on. And number two, for example, if yesterday a case is decided in Karachi, today technically that case is an evidence, which a lawyer can produce in the court and say that, look, this is the precedence, that in this kind of circumstances, this decision is made. So if the case is actually very close to that other case which was decided, this is a legal evidence, not just the book of law. Can any judge physically remember all those 70 million cases which exist in the history and use all that reference even if he's very well versed with the law? Not really. So it essentially depends upon the lawyers. Then can the lawyers bring the exact right case which is of the right reference to your case and produces the result which is going in their favor and put that in front of the judge at the right time? If that is done, then the case is decided in your favor. If not, if just that reference is not there, the decision might go the other way, right? So this kind of system, in a totally social kind of setting, where it's the humans bringing the case, humans deciding it, all the data being heard of, there is no basic involvement of the machine making anything, in a precise way or something like it is in the car, the engine is running or something like that. But even this traditionally social kind of system needs this reform, without which we are missing a lot of basic ingredients, right? Relevance to all the history of the cases, which is essentially a basic part of this system. And AI enables us to do that. Now another thing, interesting thing is just this project, is that AI does not come in just once the data is annotated and ready and there in the disks, and then you can, it's already in that form, and then you start finding out which are the relevant cases. So when we started talking to them, and people started talking to us that yes, there will be data and we'll be doing data science, and the question is, do we need AI right now? So I asked them a question. How will you have that data to do the data science with? Because first of all, a lot of the cases, the English OCR you can do, because now the basic software are there in the scanners, they're not that accurate and everything, but they are there at least. What about the handwritten text? So what about the spoken text, for transcription? But what about the Urdu text which is written, in a lot of papers? Some of the papers don't even have very good printing anymore. So you need AI algorithms to actually scan all that thing, interpret all of that into digitally interpretable form, and then use that thing later on with annotation to actually take it to that form where it can be used by the AI systems. Without AI, they will not even have the properly annotated data, because they need the AI tools for OCR and computer vision, and of course transcription. Sometimes when the paper nothing is readable, we get a person to sit down and read it on the paper what's written there, and the computer is typing that. To bring all of that into one place, then annotate it, then extract the keywords, get the relevance, cross-reference everything, build the knowledge base, and based on that apply artificial intelligence. So it's a huge project. We are separately working with all of the high courts as well, Peshawar High Court, Lahore High Court, Sindh High Court, they're all in connection with us, and with the Ministry of Law and Justice, the Justice Commission of Pakistan. We're working on this project, centrally being executed by the Supreme Court of Pakistan. This is just in the beginning stages. And ladies and gentlemen, AI is going to bring about a revolution in Pakistan, and we are just seeing the starting of it. This project is to start with. The computer is saying that the battery is running low. In case anybody wants to put charger, the presentation might turn off. Okay. So we already know artificial intelligence. I just introduced you to one particular example. And in this particular case, you can already see natural language processing and knowledge representation, both of these things. So no worries, I'm pretty okay with speaking even without the slide. So knowledge representation, natural language processing, all these things, and then machine learning, these three names you can relate from that slide. But many other examples like self-driving cars require motion planning, right? So this is yet an unsolved problem. Many people think motion planning is a solved problem. It is a solved problem in very basic scenarios. When the obstacle information is all available and all readily marked out correctly, which no vision algorithms can do appropriately even until now, and optimal solutions are still not available. Most of the time we are in the feasible solutions. With dynamic obstacles, no one has really tried to solve them. There are very few arrangements exist for that. Even in MIT, people are doing researches on sampling-based algorithms. They are using static scenarios. So all of these are open areas of research right now. So these are open areas right now. And artificial intelligence, in every particular domain of research, in every particular field, AI with a different name. But at the base of it all, it's the same AI algorithms that we are all using, right? So if you look at the paradigms of artificial intelligence, okay. So if you look at the paradigms of artificial intelligence, it all starts with Alan Turing's idea of the Turing test, which he presented in the 40s, and even until now, again, it's complete duplicate. We have to, I think, because this slide is important, I have to refer to this slide. So basically, there are 4 types of I think I'm pretty audible without this slide, yes. So there are 4 basic types in which you can perceive artificial intelligence. The first one is that when we talk about AI, basically what we want is that we want the machine to be able to solve some problems which humans normally solve, just in a way like humans solve it, right? So we should not be able to distinguish, for example, if a text is interpreted by a machine and read out by a newscaster on the TV, if it's not a newscaster which is, a human, if it is actually a person reading it out, it's one thing. If the machine is reading it out, there should be no mistakes. The annotation and all these kinds of things, mimicking the human, should be done in a very accurate way, right? So that's the first definition, which is acting human. This is a very relevant definition even today, right? Because human-robot interaction or human-computer interaction, the whole field rests on this. With the annotation, for example, it is whether it seems natural to the human or not. This is the base of that field, right? The second one is that if you want the machine to behave like a human, then it's only rational to think that the machine should think like a human as well. But then the question comes, how do humans think? Right? Because we have little knowledge is available on how the brain is actually working in medical sciences. So the first thing, like when I wrote my first AI program, before I had studied AI as a subject, I was making the game of Black Queen, right? For the machine to play against me, the 4 players. So I started thinking, when we used to play this pretty frequently in college, so I started thinking, if I was playing, how would I play it? That's called introspection. So with introspection, I started making a flowchart and try to play, program the machine to work exactly like what I would do. The other way is to observe other humans in action, and the third one is to get some brain-computer interface to work and see which kind of lobes humans are detecting. But you can well recognize that this field is, does not give us any precise knowledge about the working of the brain, not to the extent that we require to make AI. So we have a long way to go. Then another angle is that, when we say that we want machines to do things like humans do, we actually mean that we want machines to do certain tasks correctly, rather than just mimicking a human. Because humans sometimes are not good at some tasks. Some other humans may be better, one driver may be better than the other driver. But we want our self-driving car to learn from that driver who is actually good at driving, rather than from another driver who makes an accident every time he steps on the road, right? So for that, the next approach started coming in, that why don't we think rationally? There's a whole paradigm of works. For example, in fuzzy, when we start to convert human knowledge into machine's knowledge and start to convert words and phrases and linguistics and putting them together into making logic or fuzzy logic. There is one traditional logic, there is one fuzzy logic, and making that logic drive machines. So you know that fuzzy transactions is one of the highest ranking transactions in terms of impact factor, ranking above PAMI for a number of years, in IEEE transactions domain. So thinking rationally is also one of the good practical areas. But the problem is that when the number of variables becomes very large, number of conditions becomes very large, this actually stops working, because this is for modeling such systems which are not traditionally modelable. If you want to make a non-linear model for a system which you cannot write mathematically otherwise, then you use this kind of technique, right? But otherwise, in many cases, you don't have the capacity or the time to be able to model all that thing by yourself. So the fourth domain that comes out is acting rationally, which means that even if the machine is not thinking in a rational way, we want the machine to be, giving the output which is rational. So there are many examples of that sort, and that one machine learning is one of them. That when we give the machine, we train a network, neural network is learning to recognize a face, we are not asking the machine to directly look at the nose or the face or something like that, right? So, but when we look at the signature, we are not particularly asking the machine to look at a certain aspect, just like a human would try to make some logic out of the signature and try to notice the same parts, like in that. The whole process of learning works by itself by looking at different aspects, identifying the features on its own, now that we have deep learning. And even though that thinking process or that whole process of learning is not basically the same way as a human would work, the machine gives output which is rational. So that acting rationally is the fourth paradigm. So you see, two of these paradigms are in the domain of thought process and reasoning, and two of them are in the domain of behavior. Right? So all these four together make artificial intelligence, and for different applications, different kinds of techniques are put in place. If you look at the significance of artificial intelligence, this is an extract from an article titled AI Wars Will China Defeat the US? and this is published by Forbes in January 2019. The article reads, and it's a very famous quotation, a lot of people are citing it everywhere. AI is forecasted to add US dollars 15.7 trillion to the global GDP by 2030. It's a big number. The main reason is that this technology is general purpose, having applications that span industries like healthcare, transportation, financial services, energy, and so on. Some consider AI to be on par with what we saw with the revolution of electricity during the 20th century. Right? So just like nothing in this world today works without electricity, in the future, don't expect there to be a time when your systems, even the normal driving systems, if somebody is driving a car on the road, or when you put your money in the bank and some assessments and things are done based on that, nothing will work without artificial intelligence. That is how critical this field is. So it is just some statistics that insights-driven public companies are actually supposed to benefit by 27% annual growth by just AI technologies, whereas the venture-based startups are forecasted to have 40% annual growth using artificial intelligence. These are just some fields which I jotted down. I sat down and I started writing some names and where AI can have applications. You can add maybe 100 more names to the list where AI can have applications. But I would rather focus on the particular areas in which we have labs focusing on the work, and some of the other areas where we don't have labs focusing. For example, human augmentation is one area where we don't have a direct lab focusing on human augmentation area. But maybe some of you know that when Samsung Global Outreach Program issued the call for proposals, human augmentation was a full domain of proposals in which they invited applications. It's that big a commercial aspect that is expected from just human augmentation, and we don't even have a lab for that. So the labs that we do have, like National Center of Artificial Intelligence, coming to the setup which I'm leading now, stepping away from the basic AI stuff and coming to the labs what they are working, the areas they're working in. We are headed by a national steering committee, which is actually headed by the executive director of HEC. It has a lot of policy makers like the member from the planning commission, the chairman of ICT R&D fund, chairman of PASHA, some of the leading scientists from the defense, as well as the private industry who are part of it. Some of the leading scientists, rectors of some universities. They together come up in the national steering committee and they meet once to twice a year to give us a guideline for the kind of work that we're supposed to be doing. Other than that, the day-to-day management and all the financial distribution and everything else, also the research leadership is actually centrally controlled by the NCI Secretariat. This is the body which I am heading right now. And under this secretariat, the labs which are working are in 6 different universities. There are 9 labs working in 6 different universities, and these were selected on competitive grounds by asking all the universities to submit their proposals. I think many of you might be familiar with that. All the universities were asked to submit their proposals, what AI work have they done, and how can they actually do more work which can bring practical difference to Pakistan, both in terms of the research aspect and also the practical inclusion of artificial intelligence in various kinds of systems. And these labs were selected. The labs are based in NUST, CIIT, Comsats University Islamabad now it's called, the NED UET Karachi, UET Peshawar, UET Lahore, as well as the PU labs here. The UET Lahore setup, of course, you may be more familiar than me. I visited for the first time today. So, coming to the first lab, I'll go lab by lab, and I'll only have one slide per lab here. And if you want to see the details, just step to the UET Lahore setup right here. You'll see what each slide is representing. So there are like 4 different groups doing different research here, and that's represented in one slide. So the Intelligent Robotics Lab at NUST focuses on navigation and mobility, both in aerial domain as well as the ground domain. Applications such as, for example, crowd surveillance work, in the aerial domain where the systems are moving, and they also have to keep track of their own IMUs and SLAM and other steps like that, simultaneous localization mapping, self-driving, or later on the assisted, not necessarily complete self-driving, because you have 5 levels in self-driving. You don't have to make the car completely autonomous, but some level of safety features from the car, for example, can be added here. The indoor or warehouse robotics, for example, industry is asking us for this kind of solution, so we've started working on this. Crop surveying, crop yield estimation, pest detection are falling within the domain of precision agriculture. So both of these domains, the Intelligent Robotics Lab is working in. So essentially, these are the algorithms whose data, most of the time overlaps with the real world data. So that's why it's termed as robotics, because robotics these days has some AI component in it for sure. And once the AI component is there, the difference with other AI algorithms is that this is working on real world data and it is impacting real world systems. The second is the deep learning lab, also at NUST. So this focuses on the vision-based algorithms for ground surveillance, aerial surveillance, and then the third system, which is for data surveillance. The judiciary project that I have shown you is one project of this lab of the domain of data surveillance. And just the domain of data surveillance has other projects besides that as well. So you can imagine the scale of the projects that they are basically doing. Then it's the medical imaging and diagnostics lab based at Comstat University Islamabad. They are working on brain tumor detection, breast cancer detection, tuberculosis detection and identification. So a very big area for them to cover as well. The Smart City Lab at NUST Karachi is working on smart traffic and people management, living vehicles, visual positioning systems. A very simple example I can give you is that, for example, if you go to a certain mall and you want to see which shop is selling what, so you can put up your mobile phone and move it around like this. You will get some tags on every shop or every place, what's selling in which place and stuff like that. So digital marketplace, this is one of their projects. They have other projects of that kind as well. Agro, they had produced some time back. So it's a very successful running agriculture-based, AI-based agriculture business in Pakistan, which is centered in Karachi. The Neurocomputation Lab is working on the neuromorphic computing hardware and software design. We all know that neural networks, genetic algorithms, and a number of software technologies are bio-inspired, right? So now is the time when hardware is starting to get bio-inspired as well. The system on chip thing with the presentation which you've seen. So a lot of the systems, the new systems being designed are actually neuromorphic. So these neuromorphic designs are being put in place by this lab, Neurocomputation Lab at NUST Karachi. Actually, they have recently informed me that they have also won one of the Horizon 2020 projects with 100 million PKR funding, equivalent to 100 million PKR funding for Pakistan. The first one, of course, we already have at NUST. So the other area in which they're working is the brain-machine interface with AR and VR experience. AR and VR alone, if you just rank AR and VR, this comes in the top 10 technologies. So it's a very significant technology for the coming time. Also for trainings and gaming and a number of applications are there for AR and VR. So when you put this technology together with brain-computer interfaces, then it brings about a more immersive experience. So that's what this lab is heading towards. The Intelligent System Design Lab at UET Peshawar is working on the natural and man-made disaster management. So natural disasters, you understand, is the earthquakes, the floods and everything which are so frequent in Pakistan, but we definitely need some AI solutions for that because the real intelligence is not so, so far not solving them, because we need data, right? To correctly interpret and see where climate change is heading, what will we need in the next 10 years and plan accordingly. So the man-made disaster, there are other cases which are more unpredictable. Like for example, there's a bomb blast somewhere, some unfortunate incident like that, or the fire in the train, or some other accident like that. So how to distribute resources inside a landscape, for example, in the city and regional planning, how to distribute resources so that a best reaction can be possible at a time when something unfortunate like that comes about. And then what's the best way to react? So both of these things fall in the domain of the man-made disaster management. The Intelligent Information Processing Lab at UET Peshawar again is working in mineral resource estimation and mine planning. So in this, of course, that mining is an area which in the future is supposed to be completely roboticized. Human beings are supposed to go out of that area. In South Africa, a number of other places, already there's a lot of work taking place in that mine. And for now at least, we're not taking humans out of it, but at least we're trying to design safer mines. That how to dig the mine, how the mine should be planned so that it will be safe for the workers to work in. How many people should go in there, looking at various aspects in the mine planning domain. And AI in healthcare, there are several other projects other than diagnosis as well in healthcare. For example, the trends of a certain disease, like if a certain epidemic is about to break out, there's a certain trend, or based upon what kind of diseases were there last year at a certain part of the year, so which kind of medication should be ordered and stuff like that. So they're working on this AI in healthcare domain as well. Here, Intelligent Criminology Lab, I think Dr. Usman is here. He can give a much better talk than me on this one. So, and a lot of his team members are sitting here. So I hope I'm telling all the details of the work that you're doing. So the main focus areas are the crime detection, crime prevention, crime mitigation, and they're doing some pretty amazing work in detecting, for example, if two persons are just standing there, if they're hugging together, they're shaking hands, so they're fighting with each other. So even this activity can be labeled out and actually detected and put out like that. So a lot of things like, for example, locating the place from where a gunshot was heard by using microphones is required technology for Pakistan, because we don't have cameras everywhere in Pakistan. So interpreting if a car passed from one place and then it appeared in another place, somewhere to see how a vehicle is moving, to track a suspicious vehicle, is something that our Safe City project is going to require. So all of these technologies are being developed here in the Intelligent Criminology Lab, and I think there's a lot more as well, and there could be a total separate talk for this if Dr. Usman could give it some time. The Agent-Based Computational Modeling Lab is the other lab here in Lahore, and it's based in the University of Punjab. Its main focus is on the vehicle driver assistance and support systems, like this lady who's about to fall asleep. So you see, as I was mentioning to you, if somebody is, let's say, taking the human out of the loop, comes far in the future. But the drivers that are driving, that will be driving all the way from Karachi to the north, to China, to Gwadar, from Gwadar to the north, to take benefits of the China-Pakistan economic corridor, if they're feeling lazy or dizzy, while driving, the chances of accidents are more. So, for example, just to give you, let's take an example which is more closer to heart. So recently we have done a study at NUST on this, because we work on trainings and stuff, that if somebody is doing software coding and he's sitting on the computer and he's coding for some time, what's the best way to take output from that person who is doing the coding? What effect does it have on the person's brain? After how much time the brain is getting tired and the person is not able to think of the algorithms like that? If he is making an algorithm which is mathematically intensive, the numbers are different. If it is not mathematically intensive, the numbers are different. So based on the kind of algorithm you put a person to manage, so we have a lot of software houses here, and this technology would be very useful for them. So, and then there is the realistic traffic simulators, etc., where they will be developing. We are very fond of closing down the roads for one purpose or the other. So every time we decide to do that, what effect will that have? What effect will doing so have on the lives of the people? And everybody will be stuck on the road. What will happen to the traffic? So we just want to know, the first thing is to know what's going to happen. Then the government can think about how they're going to prevent it or something. So coming to some of the projects, I didn't put projects of all the labs here, but these are just some of the projects from the NUST lab which I could conveniently, jot out the results from and put it in the slides here. So these results, most of them which I'm showing you, are just results from 2 of the labs, and these are not all of the projects. These are some of the projects, and there's a lot more going on. The staff of NCI is around 222 people overall. So each one of them is doing some research on its own, so you can imagine. So here is vehicle counting and classification. Now this system is working in real time, and actually this result is actually captured in real time like that. And it is like the mean accuracy is 90%, it's real time, it's robust to illumination conditions, as you can see here, even very dim lighting and a lot of you could say shine coming off the road, it's able to detect the vehicles appropriately and classify at least the bikes from the cars and stuff. And here you can see that, for example, another example where from one side of the vehicle is visible, then it's visible from the front, and then it's visible from the other side, and still the classification accuracy, remains up at that level which is required. So these are more simpler examples in which, just cars are going on the straight roads and you'll be able to detect them and stuff. Another example here, this project was done in collaboration with Umarpura University, already done and dusted. This has been given to Saudi Arabia. So this was the anomaly detection in dense crowds, that if all the people are moving in one direction and you statistically model the dominant motion in the scene. So it's not pre-programmed that people will be moving in one direction. If all the people start walking in one direction and one person starts to do something different, like this guy here, so he'll be labeled out and pointed out that he's walking in a different direction. So this is useful, for example, when we have processions in Rabiul Awwal or in Muharram or the political rallies. So for safety of the people, this is very much essential. So this is unsupervised learning here, and it is applicable to all the structured scenes. This is developed for the structured scenes in particular. Another project which we have done for some collaborators in the UK, so the University of Manchester, the Manchester Metropolitan University and the University of Salford shared with us the data set which had data of G7 countries plus Australia, the financial data of banks in G7 countries plus Australia. So this contained the data of 1,139 banks. And interestingly, because if you look at this time period, that 2003 to 2013, this is the time during which the Lehman Bank crisis also happened, and a lot of financial institutions were going through a lot during that time. So 34%, it's a big number, 34% of the banks in this data set were actually failing, right? And they were interested in seeing how we can predict that bank failure. Can we develop a model to predict that? And I'm happy to say that we were able to do it by the accuracy of 31%. The results have already been given back to our collaborators, and we are formulating joint papers to publish based on that. Of course, we can't share the data set. It's like a project, confidentiality done with them, but we do know the model now. So it can be applied to a lot of clients in Pakistan as well, because we know how to look at the data now, right? So this is people counting. This is an image from Giga Mall in Rawalpindi or Islamabad, whichever you want to term it. DHA, you can classify it anywhere. So this is just for seeing that if there's more footfall in one area of the mall, then of course it's just person detection, that how many people are there. So relatively easier project, but of a commercial nature. That if people are going in one direction more than the other, then the rent of the shops there would be higher, or the advertisement cost there would be higher or something. So a commercial focused project, and with the accuracy of 90%. Another very interesting project, this is more towards the language interpretation, and it is like most of the drivers in Pakistan, Google Maps is there now, and all of us who use it now know the utility of Google Maps, right? It's a more temporal map, stepping away from the conventional motion planning scenario when you actually used to use the distance only as the heuristic on which decisions would be made. But now it's the temporal distance. The same pathway could be longer or shorter depending upon which time of the day you're traveling in. Right? So actually that changes. So here is another thing, that if, for example, our normal regular truck drivers wanted to use that application, but they're not able to use the interface which Google provides. And when the lady speaking in Google, she's speaking turn right, turn left, the guy saying I don't know what she's talking about, right? So for the benefit of this guy, what we can have is that some sort of Urdu interface that he can just speak to the map and tell car number, gully number, something where many delivery boys would use this kind of thing, where they want to go to drop something, and the map would speak back in Urdu language. Daएं मुड़े, बाएं मुड़े, is एक गली छोड़ के यहाँ से इतने किलोमीटर बाद दाएं मुड़े. So that interface has been developed and given to the company TPL Tracker. It's a funded project from TPL Tracker. It has been developed and given to the company. It's a commercial project. They'll be marketing it, and this will be challenging for our drivers over there. Many of you might be familiar with this project. It has been all over the media. I think hardly there is any television channel in Pakistan that has not covered it. So this is RoboCop, in which there are 6 robots on one side, 6 robots on the other side. They're playing soccer autonomously with each other. I myself personally was supervising this project, and it's like this is the first team ever from the whole South Asian region that made it to the topmost league of the RoboCop competition. And this one basically is that the robots basically have to perceive everything in the environment by themselves. They have to look at, for example, where the goal is, where the D line is, looking at the L and T, for example. You can see this is an L, this is a T. So these are landmarks, and then relating those landmarks with each other, they have to find out where each robot is standing on its own. So every robot finds that out separately. There is no, the robots are not allowed to use any rooftop cameras or ceiling cameras or something like that. Every robot has to do that itself. Then they have to behave independently, each robot thinking by itself, but somehow cooperating with each other to win the game. And at the same time competing with the other team too. So it's competitive and cooperative, multi-agent, artificial intelligence at the same time. And given that here, this is not a completely, you could say the visibility is also it's partial observability. So it's a partial observability scenario too. So you can imagine the level of difficulty. Other universities competing in this include University of Pennsylvania, UT Austin, Carnegie Mellon, UNSW, University of Bremen, and a lot of big names like that. So it was a big thing for us to even make it, to the competition. We haven't so far won a prize, but at least we are there. So when the kids started coming to our lab and they started seeing this project, they are amazed by just the shape of the lab and moving around, and the robot is kicking the ball and stuff. And they're so amazed with it that we actually started thinking that why don't we use this? They don't want to move away from the robot, right? They're so attractive. So we decided to use these robots with kids who have problem concentrating over things, like people who have autism spectrum disorder. Right? So their problem is that they don't have joint attention towards one particular thing. Even if a person is talking and it's very immersive, the kid would look away after some time, depending upon the CAR score, the childhood autism rating score, what the level of autism is. So there are 3 levels in which they can be broadly classified, and we developed 3 different therapies for them. So the first one, which is for the most severe cases of autism having high autism scores, is the involvement. Involvement means that the robot should just do something interesting, and the child is watching the robot, and the robot is able to keep the attention of the child for the longest time. Behind this are our theories which we published in years before we started developing this therapy. That if you, for example, move a hand in a slow way and in a fast way, the perception of the human brain about the emotion that the robot is trying to convey is different, right? So we have entire papers just on the movement of one arm, and how that movement is interpreted by the human brain. If it's just a mechanoid, not having any shape, not looking like a human or anything. So the first part of the therapy is to involve the child towards, the robot. The second one, if the child is behaving well with that, the second therapy is the imitation. In imitation, we coax the child to mimic what the robot is doing and see how accurately the child follows, which actually reflects upon how accurately the child is watching the robot, how much detail he's actually observing, right? So this is another level of joint attention. And then the third one is interaction. That the child could actually play with the robot, and the robot is kicking the ball to the child is kicking the robot, not kicking the robot, kicking the ball back to the robot. And the good thing is that this analysis of how the child is performing, we can't, plot the whole SCAR score just by the robot. There's an expert therapist who does that, but some, points from the SCAR score, like the joint attention and, some other, particular things like eye contact, how many times the child breaks away, how many seconds the child is looking at the robot for continuous time, can simultaneously be measured by the robot during the therapy, which means that we can up the therapy. If we think the child is really performing well, we can take him from just from involvement to imitation during the therapy. And even in imitation, we have simple gestures and more complex gestures. Some things which are based upon just voice, for example, will be more complicated. Something that is visual, like it's one thing, and something which is just voice, like let's take a step back, and then the robot takes a step back. Something like that. So how is the voice being interpreted? Sometimes the robot does not take a step back. And can you step back or something like that? So introducing questions of this sort, we've done this. We've tested it on 22 different children over the period of on 16 patients it was the period of 8 months I think, and before that I don't exactly remember the period, but 6 patients it was before that. First Head Start School in Islamabad, and the other was in Autism Research Center in E11 in Islamabad. And this has very remarkable results. So in 2 of the children, it showed really remarkable, you could say improvement in there, which is obvious from their daily behavior, right? Like the way they talk to the parents, the way they talk to the therapists, other humans around. And with the rest of the patients also, we see a consistent improvement in their class score. So the system is really working, and this is very rewarding for us to see that we started something in the lab for a competition, and the children came and they started seeing it as a story behind it, and then it started working there. And now recently, one of the provincial government, the KPK government, is showing some interest in trying to test this thing in some special schools. Some other organizations have also shown interest. If there are anybody here from Lahore, they want to try this kind of system in special schools, we are keen, and we have collaborators in Lahore, with whom joint work can be done in this system. This is another project which we've done for the Japanese, Sakura Wheelchairs of Japan. This is actually, you could say, an organization, an NGO, which has been formed by some of the Japanese wheelchair manufacturers. The most leading one of them is Saito Kobo. So basically what we are trying to do is that for the severely disabled people, even in countries like Japan, so far there are not a lot of solutions around. In Pakistan here, almost all the universities have attempted to build wheelchairs in one way or the other. There are a couple of startups here as well who started seeing some of our presentations, and mashallah they have done very well in developing some of the wheelchairs. But some very core problems are not solved in all those scenarios which actually go on. For example, you can give a wheelchair like this command, like for example, okay, first of all let me explain what the architecture is. Now this wheelchair has a laser viewfinder over here, it has a stereo camera over here. Here at the back of it is a whole computer. Actually there are 2 separate computers working together. One working on vision and the other working on planning and control, which is actually the general architecture for ROS-based robots in the world. And then here you have interfaces like EEG and other things that there are other interfaces also that this person can wear, like interface which detects the movement of the eyeball. So, for example, if using the brain, you give a command like turn right to the wheelchair. There are others which say turn right and the wheelchair turns right. But what does it actually mean to turn right? Is it 40 degrees right? Is it 35.5 degrees right? Is it a complex path which the robot has to follow? So a robot is coming from here and is supposed to turn here and go, through that, you could say, corridor. So how does it interpret that? That's purely AI based, right? So that kind of decision comes from environment interpretation. So environment perception using the laser rangefinder and the stereo camera is the first thing. Then is the path planning, then is the navigation, and then you have interfaces like the brain-computer interface, and then is the semi-autonomous steering algorithm. That once you know that the wheelchair is supposed to turn right, what to do in that given scenario. once you know the obstacle arrangement. So you can make this wheelchair to wander around, it will make a map of the environment in the wander mode. You can actually control it using your brain, drive it using EEG. You can drive it using the movement of the eyeball. There's another mode in which you can walk in front of the wheelchair and it follows you. But again, the mode which Japanese found, like the first one that they want to market is the mobile phone based control. Even that one requires semi-autonomous steering because you are giving the command of going right, but it should not bump into obstacles. It should refine its motion. Our motion planning algorithms which we made for RoboCup and also for this wheelchair were actually very well taken by this world. This is more of a theoretical contribution. You will see less of these in the presentations because in Pakistan we have a tendency to focus on the applications more. But this is one area in which we have contributed in the theory, and you see this was extended to a PhD thesis by MIT in 2015, and the algorithm they picked up, the RRT Star Smart, was actually the first one that we produced. It's not the best one of today. We have produced 8 different algorithms which are different in the theoretical basis. Right? So one of them has been upgraded to MIT. There are others which work much faster than that. So we are, you start naming these MIT, Carnegie Mellon, Georgia Tech. We are cited by almost all the major universities. In this will be post, but you can check. So in these motion planning algorithms, sampling based motion planning. We are working on developing an intelligent prosthetic hand. So it's, other than intelligence, mechanically it's also significantly different from a lot of other attempts which people have made. So one thing which is unique here is that this is not a tendon-driven arm. It does not have tendons which drive the fingers, because in that case you don't have good force mass transmissibility. Most of the hands which are commercialized, like the Bionic and Michelangelo and other well-known prosthetic hands in the world, have inside it a whole mechanism. Like there are gears, there are like linkages with which the hand is actually being driven. So this one is a linkages and gears based hand. It is light in weight, but still it is it has that rugged machine inside it. So it has better force mass transmissibility. It has some advancement. Of course, it can do a long, it can cover around, you could say 70 to 75% of the human hand taxonomy, because the adduction and abduction movements are not there. The rest of the movements it can cover. But this hand is able, you can see that it can grab a plastic bottle like this. It can have soft grasp, it can have hard grasp. So it has different modes of the force which it can execute. And now, this year we've developed a tactile feedback system. That from the fingers, haptic feedback system you can say, or both definitions fit to some extent, that it gives 3 levels of force, and they are, they go back to the person's arm, where a person is wearing, the operator is wearing a band, so the high, medium and low force for each finger is detected separately. We had a whole testing with 32 different patients in Arm Force Institute of Rehabilitation Medicine, where we actually checked that a person is able to distinguish between force executed on one finger or the force executed on the other finger, and of course the levels of the force as well. So that's how the forces levels were tuned. And incidentally, the hospital told us that actually a very good application of this is just in therapeutics. That if you don't have the hand, and just show the person that it's mounted on the hand, and then put his hand through a cloth, and you're just using the interface, and then like the signals are coming on his arm. He's not even wearing the hand. It has a good therapeutic effect on the person's brain, because he thinks that now he is one with the hand, because he feels what the hand is touching. And actually this is the reason why most of the prosthetic hands in the world are rejected by the patients. The rejection ratio in prosthetic hands is maximum in the world, right? Compared to other kinds of processes. And the reason is that the person doesn't feel one, he doesn't feel like it's mine, he feels that this is another gadget which I am holding, with which I am doing something. The challenge is for the person to feel one with the hand. So that problem we are trying to solve. This is another example, like a patient came to us from Shifa National Hospital. We get sometimes patients referred to us. Of course, it takes us a whole year to develop something for that patient, but the key idea is to know the problem, which we can solve, and then it can be applied to a lot of different patients. And this one basically is for an exoskeleton which a person is wearing on the hand. The hand is one of the last things to recover when a person is recovering post-stroke. So the rest of the body starts recovering first. The arm starts recovering, and the hand, where there is the highest nerve concentration, is one of the last things to come back, to life. So for this, we have an EMG-based interface with which you can control, the hand, the exoskeleton is being worn on top of it, and you can control it using the EMG interface. There's another glove also with which you can control it. So if you want to train it not with the EMG interface, but you want to train it with both hands moving together. Humans have this tendency with both hands moving together. You can wear a glove on one hand and the exoskeleton on the other and train it with that. This is one of the new things that we've developed this year as well. This is the prosthetic leg with the knee that is adaptive to walking speeds. So we have used the optimization theories of artificial intelligence to design it and how the springs and other things are put inside it. So it charges when the person is taking a step forward and then discharges the energy to kick the foot forward. So we filed a patent also. Just during the last year we filed 10 different patents. Actually we were not filing a lot of patents before, so we filed them simultaneously, but this is one of them which we hope will go a long way and actually will be commercialized. This is under testing at the Armed Forces Institute of Rehabilitation Medicine right now. So you already know the judicial support system. I've spoken about this before and I'm short on time as I'm being told. So the way forward is that artificial intelligence has the potential to modernize existing systems, including technical, socio-technical, as well as systems which are conventionally social, like financial or judicial. So if you want to, for example, work in the area of AI, one good idea can be that you already have the knowledge of one particular domain. For example, one of my students has recently developed an algorithm for better distribution in a power grid. Right? The power distribution in a grid, for example, so grid optimization and stuff like that. So if you want to work in some domain like that, if you want to work in architecture, I was in MMU, just last year in Manchester Metropolitan University, they are using AI for architecture. Other people are using it in arts. People like in designing, what kind of, for example, clothing designs are more liked by people, for example. So you can use AI for that. So pick the field of AI, learn some algorithm, and start applying it in your domain. So you can modernize that particular area in which you have expertise. We've also designed a unified MS and PhD curriculum of artificial intelligence to simultaneously launch in all the NCI partner universities, including UET Lahore, across Pakistan in fall 2020. So Dr. Usman is looking into that, Dr. Wakar, various. So inshallah, we hope that it will be launched here as well. And the process is simultaneously going on in all these 6 universities. Other universities are welcome to join in, as some of the universities have shown interest. So other universities are also welcome to join in if they want to join at the same time. Specialized trainings and courses for AI, you already know that there are lots of trainings going on. 30,000 students appeared for the test of artificial intelligence in Karachi for the presidential test. 1,800 students are studying here in the National Institute of Artificial Intelligence and Information Security, which is patented by the Governor Punjab. And in Islamabad also, similar number, 17,000 students appeared in the test when it appeared. There's a huge interest in artificial intelligence. For all of these students to be able to get jobs, for all of these systems to be modernized enough to accommodate professionals trained in artificial intelligence, it's the job of us, the professionals who know artificial intelligence from one aspect to the other, to cultivate algorithms in a way that we can educate the people working in our practical domains, and also open up AI cells in every one of the industries. AI is not just a separate industry. There will be core AI, there will be pure AI industry like IBM and other companies are there in the world that will be sitting centrally, the National Center, for example, sitting centrally and working. But the main revolution of AI can be led by a lot of people who apply artificial intelligence to different domains and who take AI to their collaborating industries and open cells there, where these trained professionals will ultimately be employed and the AI revolution can actually really be materialized. So here's my contact information if you want to consult me in anything later, and I'm here for any questions if you want to ask me, if the organizers would allow. Any questions? Yes, please.
It's a matter of great pride to know from you that there are so many wonderful projects going on AI. So, commendation to you and your team, first of all. And I was just wondering, have you thought about any boundaries for AI, some directions, some no-go areas? Some things are only best handled by professionals, So AI is, of course, gives you a lot of power, but power means you need to be careful with it, right? There is in fact some research that in the coming 5 or 10 years, you're going to have so many million people who are going to be harmed by AI because of what it is. So, just quick here.
So, I'm glad to share that actually this thought of yours is not uncommon. A lot of people think this way. And this is why the United Nations is actually putting together an AI ethics standardized document. So I'm part of that from the Pakistan side. The minister himself asked me, I reviewed that document and gave some of my comments on that. But there's a central committee at the UN level, sitting in their central Paris, I think, which they have assembled. UET and others are working on it. So there is a strategy document and it's a standardization document for AI policy that is coming out from their side. Regarding technology being harmful or beneficial, you see, a gun can be used to rob a bank. It can also be used to defend your country. So it's not the gun that's evil. Nasha sharab mein hota to nachti botal. Kya ख्याल है? Right?
But we
It's
need to
not the
have-
technology itself that is inherently harmful.
We need to have the legal framework then.
For that, like the legal experts and the AI professionals have to work together, right? And because many times when the fiction people start thinking about something, they think of more harm. So humanoid robotics research, for example, has been going on for the past, I think, the first humanoid was made in 1973, which was actually walking. There were other robots as well, but none of them has turned into Terminator so far, even though we've been seeing that in movies until now. So I do agree that the boundary has to be defined. The UN and other people are working on that. We are part of that effort with them. But you see, AI is going to come whether we like it or not.
Yeah.
The countries that are going to benefit from AI are going to go forward. And if we keep stepping backwards, we are going to miss the fourth industrial revolution the same way we missed the third one.
Just to be more safer way, right, to go forward.
He is trying to entice you with lunch.
We have lunch ready, but remaining one talk, so
You don't have running. Yeah, it's very good talk in the last question, and I guess nobody can deny the benefits of AI. It's a huge benefit. I mean, for example, take the example of like driverless cars. Right? It can really modernize our world.
They won't hit none at least.
Yeah, but
we have so frequently this.
Yeah, but I mean, if you just compare that, let's suppose if a car is being driven by like one human, and unfortunately that one human gets into a fatal accident, you obviously like punish one person, maybe if it's a fault. But if it is a driverless car, and if that driverless car gets into a fatal accident, I mean, the impact is very, very huge. Our society is perhaps not, I'm talking about the whole global world, is perhaps not ready to accept that one mistake, or perhaps the legal issues for that one corporate organization would be building those driverless cars. So the impact would be very huge. So these are also some of the facts which should.
For example, like we had the Goja air crash. It was a human's mistake, as found out by the evaluators who looked at the accident rate, right? But who was actually punished? So if something happens erroneously, if it's not a deliberate crime to try to kill people, the treatment of that incident is different compared to somebody deliberately trying to go out of his way to kill someone. Right? So of course, like a lot of details will be coming out in the ethics document, but just to spell it out like that, once we've made sure that the system is working with reasonable accuracy, we can set that kind of conditions. But systems which, for example, driverless cars driving on the streets themselves have been going around in California and Nevada for such a long time. How many incidents of cars killing people are there?
It's a very small scale. I mean, when you get into this.
In the same California and Nevada, if you look at how many humans have gotten into accidents, there will be a fair comparison. And none of the cars have gotten into any accidents using AI. So data suggests something else. Right? But like again, I agree with you that like the ethics document needs to address this, and this is actually part. The legal framework for artificial intelligence is a part of that UN document. Actually, they've written just the basics. So, it's a very thick document, but it says on it that this is just a very basic and fundamental document. The real document is going to come out here. So they are formulating a bigger committee for that. My worry is that most of the representation there is of the developed world. There was only one, person from a non-developed country from Africa. So there has to be greater global representation even at the UN level. So I guess I have to, give the stage to the organizers. Thank you very much.